Alright guys, here we go. So I did the defensive ranking statistics the first time, and now I'm coming back with the offensive ranking statistics. And it's kind of hard not to talk about offense and get into some of the players. I wanted to save that for another video, but I'll just go ahead and start talking about some of them now, and I'll get into some of the specifics as I continue to make videos as the week progresses, as we build up toward the game. Now, first of all, I'm going to start with the quarterbacks because our football society is so obsessed with the quarterback position. You have to talk about it, even though you need more than a quarterback to win a game. But that's just me on my soapbox, so let me stop there. So first of all, I want to talk about total offense statistics. Alabama is ranked number 26 in total offense. Come as a surprise to some people. They think Alabama's just completely lacking on offense, that they can't do anything, but that's not true. We are the number 26 offense, have over 6,000 yards on the year with 53 offensive touchdowns. Washington, on the other hand, is a little bit better at the number 22 total offense. And actually, I thought that was going to be a little bit higher. But, it's Power 5 football, and you don't always get the top stats. But, yeah, number 22 in total offense. Ran 870 plays, 6,200 yards on offense, about 7.13 yards per play, which is impressive. By the way, Alabama 6.62 yards per play, and Washington's offense has scored 70 touchdowns. So very, very impressive. What I noticed about both of these teams right off the bat is that they are averaging a little bit over, basically 2/3 or 3/5, 3.5 of the amount of yards needed to get a first down on every play. What that basically means is that every time they snap a ball for a play, every play, they are halfway closer, a little bit over halfway closer to a new first down every play that they snap, which is honestly amazing. That means that they are wearing these defenses down, getting enough yardage each play to put pressure on the defense, being able to dictate to the defense what they want to do on offense, and they dictate what the defense will try to run on defense. Well, at least that's what the averages say. Now, that may play out a little bit different in the game because, like I said, averages can be inflated. What that also could mean is that the offenses aren't moving the ball that well all the time, and that they're getting chunk plays, and that's making their average look good. Now, you have a good argument there, but what the statistics show is that it might be leaning a little bit closer to what I said the first time, because look at the quarterback completion percentage, and I'll get into the average yards per rush, and it seems to fit the narrative that I first mentioned, not the second one, which is that Jalen Hurts is completing 65.3% of his passes, which is very impressive. If you remember from my defensive ranking statistics video, if you're holding your opponent to 50% completion percentage, that means that they're throwing a lot of balls just to get completions. Well, Jalen Hurts, on the other hand, is throwing 65.3%, meaning that he's completing most of the balls that he's attempting. Now, as an Alabama fan, I have a lot of familiarity with the Alabama offense, and I do know that Jalen Hurts does indeed get a lot of short passes, a lot of screen passes, and basically get the ball to the playmaker's hand. You got Calvin Ridley and Darius Stewart, get the ball to their hand, let them make the play, so he gets the chance to kind of boost and bolster his completion percentage a bit, which is good. It helps spread the defense out as well. Sometimes you want to take a little bit more deep shots, but that's another story. But I bring that up to say that he's completing a lot of his passes, meaning that they are able to move the ball in smaller chunks and get down the field. Washington, on the other hand, is also, well, don't say on the other hand, I guess I should say Washington also is doing this, with Jake Browning completing 63% of his passes. So, like I said, he's not throwing a lot of balls just to get his small number of completions. He's completing about, like I said, 3/5, 2/3 of his passes, and that makes for an efficient offense. Let me back down a little bit. So what that translates to is that these guys are able to kind of get into a rhythm and build the voice downfield. At least that's what their offenses try to do. If you watch these two teams, they both incorporate a lot of spread concepts. Of course, Washington a lot more than Alabama. Alabama has run and spread a little bit, but still focused on a power rushing attack. One of the differences between the two type of passes is, like I said, Jalen Hurts gets a lot of short passes. Washington lets Jake throw it down the field a little bit more, or at least I wouldn't say Alabama doesn't let Jalen throw down the field. It's just they're building up his confidence as a true freshman. He doesn't always see the downfield passes, and that's reflected in their yards per attempt. So I'm not going to get, well, I'll try to talk about it a little bit. So yards per attempt, like I said before, even when I'm talking about on a defensive perspective, flip it for the offense. When they have a high yards per attempt, that means that for as many times as they're throwing the ball, when they're completing it, they're getting more yards. And so if your quarterback has a higher yards per attempt, that means that he has a lot of yards that he's thrown. Whether or not he's efficient with those completions is a different story. That's when you want to look at the completion percentage. That's when you want to look at the yards per completion, which I'll try to get into a little bit later. But what this is basically showing is that Hurts and Browning are throwing for a bit more yards, and Browning's throwing more than Hurts. Browning's yards per attempt is 9.29 yards per attempt. So it's like basically for every attempt, he's almost throwing a first down for average yards per attempt, meaning that he's throwing the ball down the field a lot more than Jalen Hurts. And I say a lot more because Jalen Hurts' yards per attempt is 7.69, which means that his throws are a little bit shorter, usually at the sticks or before it, or like I said, on those screen passes. Jalen Hurts gets a lot of those throws. Jake Brown, on the other hand, tends to throw a little bit past there, first down throws, maybe a little bit more intermediate, more often. Like I said, in any spread offense, you're going to throw short passes, so he does that too. But I think he, with a little bit more experience, he's throwing the ball a little bit further down the field. And this is reflected in their total yards. Jake Browning has thrown 3,280 yards passing. Jalen Hurts has thrown for 2,592 yards passing. There you go. You see it. Jalen Hurts' completion percentage, his yards per completion is about 12 yards per completion, 11.8, while Jake Browning's is about 14 yards per completion. And that reflects what I was saying before. He throws the ball down the field a little bit further than Jalen, not in terms of arms, just in terms of like the type of passes he's trying to hit. He's looking down the field a little bit more than Jalen, and when he hits them, he's hitting them well. Like I said, 14 yards per completion, which explains why he has more passing yards than Jalen Hurts. Which also sets him up to be a bit more dangerous with the ball, but that isn't necessarily the case because he only has 7 interceptions on the season. We'll try to talk about that a little bit more later on. While Jake Browning has 42 touchdowns thrown himself, Jalen Hurts has 22. And that's just a product of Washington having more offensive touchdowns in general. So, of course, they're going to have the more touchdowns. Washington's offense is a bit more quick strike, while Alabama's tends to kind of plow down the field. And they can hit big plays too, but they're a bit of a chewer rather than taking big chunks going down the field. Big plays that get touchdowns, even though Alabama can't do that. And it's a little hard to talk about because Alabama does both, but with Jalen Hurts, they kind of tend to take it a little bit more slower, whereas with Washington, I think they're a bit more aggressive in their offense in that way. Now, moving on, if you don't know more about that, you can continue. There's a lot goes into this. But with the rushing offense, Alabama's number 14, so they have the decided advantage here. Alabama's rushing offense is better than Washington's. Washington's at number 36 in the rushing offense, but it's not bad, I'll tell you that. I've watched a little bit of their tape, and I'm going to talk about this when I talk about their games. Washington has Myles Gaskins, and they have Levon Coleman. They both impress me as running backs. One's a bit more shifty, has a lot of quickness. The other has a more long-term speed, but a much more sturdy base and body. Alabama, on the other hand, has a plethora of running backs. You got Damian Harris, you got Bo Scarborough. Jalen Hurts runs because he's a dual threat quarterback. Joshua Jacobs, the true freshman who doesn't get as many carries as much. And B.J. Emmons, also a true freshman who got a little bit hurt toward the end of the season, but he was running well. Both teams have run the ball at least 500 times on the season. Alabama's averaging 5.74 yards per carry. Washington is averaging 5.46 yards per carry. Alabama has 20 rushing touchdowns. Washington has 24 rushing touchdowns. Alabama has over 3,000 yards rushing, 3,185, while Washington has 2,730. So Alabama has the advantage. They run the ball. They have run the ball 55 more times than Washington on the season, and they gain more yards per rush than Washington does every time they run the ball. which makes sense based on how Alabama's offensive line is built, based on how they try to run the ball and how they try to establish that. Now, I bring all this up to say that if you notice, and it's kind of hard to say with Washington, but both of these teams are very, very balanced. But the what was the word I'm looking for? The narrative that's going to play out these upcoming days before the game is that Washington is this big, wide open offense that likes to throw the ball all over the field and get all these plays. And it is very true that they like to throw the ball. But the truth is that they've only thrown the ball, at least with their quarterback, I think, or maybe their whole team, only 435 times all season. And they've run the ball 500 times. So they've run the ball more than they've thrown it, and they're actually very, very successful. I think for a while, and I think they may still be, they were leading the Pac-12 in rushing yards per game. Their running game is actually what established their offense, which is really, really interesting. So you're going to hear a lot of talk about Washington being a wide-open offense that likes to throw the ball all over the place, but in reality, they run the ball quite a bit, and their Myles Gaskin is actually a 1,000-yard rusher, if I'm not mistaken. So actually, one of the key components of Washington's offense is their running game, which is exemplified by their number 36 rushing offense and about how much they actually do run the ball. Whereas Alabama, of course, everyone knows that already. A lot of people like to do another narrative and say that all Alabama does is run the ball. They can't do as much, which is not necessarily the case. But the running game is the feature, which is most important in the Alabama offense. They've run the ball more than they've thrown it as well. 555 times to 412 passing attempts. I guess Damian Harris, I think, is pretty close to going over 1,000 yards. Bo Scarborough's gotten quite a few carries over the last few games. He's close to 400 yards rushing. Joshua Jacobs doing well. Jalen Hurts is the second leading rusher on the team. So they're running the ball quite a bit, getting a lot of yards, which explains why they're the number 14 rushing offense. And these are just some of the offensive statistics. I'm not going to get into all of them. This will just give you a basic overview. Now that you've gotten this and you kind of understood where everything's are, I want to say that both of these teams like to be balanced. Both of them run the ball more than they throw it. Washington tends to be a little bit more aggressive throwing the ball down the field, while Alabama tends to stick to opening up the defense with shorter passes while still establishing the run, and that's the main difference. But they both run the ball. Be on the lookout for me as I'm going to talk about some of these players, some of these key injuries, especially Washington on defense. Well, Alabama had some as well to look out for. I'm going to talk about that maybe next, and then I'll try to get into some coaching. And then, like I said, I've been watching this Washington film, and I'm going to talk about what I've seen from them on tape and how that may impact the game this December 31st, New Year's Eve. Thanks for paying attention, guys. See you on the next video.